Hi, ich heiße Tony Sheridan. Okay, okay, this is Cafe Miller, and this is where we used to have tea. Not, a glass of hot water and a tea bag. Of course, we always used to have two tea bags to make it taste English. And there was a jukebox like this, and the music in the jukebox in those days was a bit of Elvis, a bit of Chuck Berry, a bit of Buddy Holly, and German singers as well. We didn't understand any German in those days, but we had people like Peter Krauss and Ted Harold, Peter Alexander, and Freddie Quinn was the biggest guy. He was like singing these Seaman songs, and the people loved him. He was a big star. And then, of course, we came with our authentic sounding rock and roll and playing round the corner, up the top 10, etc. And all of a sudden, we were seeing Elvis was in there, and lots of other people who weren't there. Bob Dylan was in there. People that we who hadn't been in there before, because the taste of the people was changing. It was not only the German stuff and what they call Schlager. It was sort of rock and roll as well. So it was American and German and English all mixed up. And I think we had a lot to do with changing people's tastes, because the revolution of playing 8 hours a night and every night for months on end, this had to change something. And what it did, I think, was to open the ears and eyes of young kids especially, that something was going on, and things were coming to Germany maybe 2 years later than anywhere else. So we brought American music, if you like, to Hamburg, and of course we were just copying at the beginning. We were listening to the record and copying what we heard and playing it on stage again, reproducing it, and not being original. But after a while, we discovered that the German public didn't mind if we changed a few things, if we changed a few chords, we sang it in a different way. And of course, we used to play a song not 2 minutes, 25 seconds. We used to play one song sometimes 15 minutes long. And in 15 minutes, you can do a lot with a song like What I Say. So we were changing the music. We were doing it on purpose too. It wasn't an accident. We discovered that you can make something original and authentic out of an old song by doing your own thing and putting your own energy into it, your own creativity, and being innovative at the same time. And that, of course, you don't get bored that way after playing 8 hours a night for months on end. So the music that sort of came out of all this was sort of going back to Britain and putting out some feelers and getting some roots. And the whole English music scene changed because of what was going on here. Because lots of musicians from England came through this school. It's like a school, music school really. And they learned to play all night, and they learned to polish it up and become authentic and to become real all of a sudden. And went back to Britain and knocked everybody out by doing what they learned here. And from that, sort of the British Revolution, the British music thing took off, and part of that were, of course, the Beatles. Not only the Stones, the Beatles too. I think without St. Pauli, the Beatles wouldn't have become what they were later, like the hairstyles, because they went off to Paris one weekend and with a photographer called Jürgen Vollmer. And when they came back, they had these funny hairstyles. And of course, they were not only new hairstyles, but they were also washed. The hair was clean. There was no cream in it and all that stuff. Previously, we all looked like the Elvis thing, and all trying to look like James Dean and Marlon Brando. But they came back looking very French all of a sudden, and with a long scarf around your neck and everything. And this was not the rock and roll image. So something started here too, and I think they just went to Paris and brought back what was worth bringing back from Paris, which wasn't a lot in those days, because there was no rock and roll music, nothing happening there except Edith Piaf and Johnny Halliday. He was, you can't, you know, he doesn't really count when it comes to rock and roll. So what went on in Hamburg was more than just the music. All of a sudden, we were noticing people coming into the club, older people, people with suits and ties, with their ladies, with their wives, maybe with their daughters, I don't know. But they were respectable type people who normally wouldn't come to St. Pauli. They wouldn't even be seen here. But suddenly we're seeing, you know, the young kids and the exes with their long hair and the beards and the sandals, sitting next to the guy who might be an attorney or something, and he's a black suit, a grey suit, and they're all sitting in the club where we're playing and listening. So we thought, well, this is because in England it was not possible, this sort of audience. So we thought, well, something must be going on. So eventually, of course, Bert Kempfert came in and asked us to do a record, which we did, of course. And out of that, My Bonnie came out, and you know, it got the Beatles off the ground as well. It helped to get them off the ground later in Liverpool when they got their manager, Brian Epstein. So you know, we did some very strange things here. I mean, just to play 8 hours a night, every night, for months on end, it's a physical feat. You've got to be like you know, like it's like sport. You know, you're banging away and sweating, and a little beer to sort of, and you sweat the beer out again, and you have some cornflakes around the corner and have a cup of tea in here. But basically what we did was transform everything we'd heard by the Americans, the American music, and made something new out of it. Of course, when the Star Club opened, well, all of a sudden they had people from the States, the real thing, you know, Chuck Berry and Ray Charles, Fats Domino with a big band, all these black guys, like 20 black guys on the stage. So all of a sudden we did feel sort of a little bit inferior, because we were still the second-hand players at that time. But at the same time, we got to see our idols, and down here at the Star Club there were people we never would have seen normally. We would never have seen Ray Charles, Gene Vincent, you know, people like that, our idols in those days. But here they were in our domain, playing next door. And I was playing with some of these guys too. So Gene Vincent is doing his crazy acts like Ozzy Osbourne on stage, and I'm playing guitar for this guy, you know, on stage with him. And this is a dream, you know, I'm playing with Gene Vincent. Wonderful, you know. So it was full of the most ridiculous experiences, and you couldn't even pay to get these experiences normally. But we just were here, and we were just learning, but because things were happening, it was moving. The whole history of this area really doesn't, when you look back, it doesn't last longer than 7 years. From 60 to 67, I think, then the whole thing sort of was going downhill again. Those 7 years were probably the most productive for the music industry in Europe anyway, definitely in England, and they changed society as well. They changed society here, definitely. It became salonfähig, as the Germans say, to go to the top 10 on the Reeperbahn and take your wife and listen to the Beatles, or listen to Tony Sheridan, or listen to Jerry and the Pacemakers. So it was a sort of a little revolution going on. It made people think, well, these are not bad guys with the leather jackets playing rock and roll. There's something else. They're even singing nice songs sometimes. A lot of ballads and stuff like that. And sooner or later, you know, of course, the jukeboxes like this were full of other music, not only the German stuff. And this went down to Frankfurt and Munich, but it all started here. So this was the center of beat at that time, if you like. And the impulses, the energy went all over the place, went to Holland, It went down to France. It went, all over Europe at that time, and back to Britain. So in Britain, all the musicians were coming. The musicians who had talent used to play here all those long hours, and either they became good, very proficient, or they gave up. And lots gave up. Lots of musicians, they gave up because they couldn't keep up. They saw that they didn't have what it takes. People like the Beatles, they had the talent, and playing here all these hours and months, they became good. They became better. Then they took it back to Liverpool, and people went, "Wow, what happened?" And and you're looking clean now too, and all the rest of it. So it had to do with the image. It had to do with the music. All that happened here. And the social thing too. The acceptable thing happened here. Music became acceptable. Rock and roll. I'm a little bit proud of that too, because I did my part every night, 8 hours a night. Terrible work. Bloody hell. Terrible money. No love. No food. Beer and play. St. Pauli. And here we are again. I'm sitting here next to this jukebox. What's this? Al Martino? Who's Al Martino? Oh, a German name. I can't even pronounce it anyway. But this place hasn't changed either. But society has, and I think we did a lot to help it along too. Thank you. Hi, my name is Tony Sheridan. You may not have heard the name. You may have. In connection with the old days here in Hamburg at the Star Club, Top 10, with the Beatles, etc., with all sorts of groups. We made our first records here with the Beatles. And I was a singer in those days because John Lennon's voice had gone and Paul wasn't singing as well as he could have done at that time, but my voice was stronger and better. So I did the vocals with the Beatles on my Bonnie, etc. in those days, and I'm still going strong. We were the first group to come over here and get things moving, and we changed a lot, changed the kids, the way of thinking. Little revolution came into things. It was very important for something to happen here because of the war and all the rest of it. Somebody had to come over and say, well, this is rock and roll, and we are the same as you, and all this war shit is gone forever. Nobody needs all that stuff. My parents, all our parents were, they went wild when they heard we were coming to Germany. Anyway, but I went anyway. I broke my mother's heart. I broke my mother's heart by coming to Germany, to the enemy, to play rock and roll music. And this is the place we came to. This is the place I used to drink my tea in, 2 tea bags in a glass of water, warm water. This is the jukebox. I don't know if it's the same one, but similar. Of course, in those days, when you looked in the jukebox, you didn't see Tony Sheridan, you didn't see the Beatles, you didn't see anybody like that. You saw all sorts of German names which you couldn't pronounce. Of course, that changed after our stay, and part of my work, I think, in those days, was to sort of make sure something happened here. Who knows, nothing might have happened, but something did happen, and it happened because of the music, and because of the leather jackets, and the hair, and Elvis, and James Dean, and Brando. And we brought all this over, and we became sort of different people as well. We started to wash ourselves, and the Beatles went back looking clean, and the Rolling Stones no, they still don't look clean. But other people went back, and everything changed in Europe. It brought everybody a little bit closer together, and I'm quite proud of my little part which I played in those days. I'm still playing, of course, today. You should listen to my CD, Vagabond. Great songs. I wrote them all myself. I'm one of these guys now who doesn't bother about a lot of publicity, Ozzy Osbourne and all that stuff. I'm sort of somewhere in the corner, at the side, in the shadows. And I'm still playing all my wonderful music, rock and roll, and my new songs too. So I've got another 45 years to go. I'm young now. I'm still young. So the next 45 years, I'm going to change me. I've changed everything else, so I'm going to change me now. Thank you very much. Bye.